From Ball State University, this is Indiana Public Radio, 92.1 WBST Muncie, 89.5 WBSB Anderson, 90.9 WBSW Marion, and the lovely 91.1 WBSH Hagerstown, Newcastle.
Tonight, our story takes place in that magical hour between Christmas Eve and Christmas morning.
'Tis the season to be jolly, la 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 la.
That's your plan?
Yeah, you and me and a few more of us, we'd own the world.
I see.
Yes.
Why?
He had to sell the old one when we lost the apartment. I just know this would make him happy.
George, where are you going?
Out to talk to those people, come on.
Our father just stood there.
Barely moving.
Barely breathing.
Would he be captured?
Would he be shot?
But then...
one of the Germans climbed out of the trench.
What day is it, my fine fellow?
Today? Why? It's Christmas Day.
It's Christmas Day! Then I haven't missed it.
Hi, I'm Michelle Kinsey, your host for the celebration of one of my favorite holiday traditions, the IPR Radio Drama. My first IPR radio drama was in 2012. I was Mrs. Hatch in It's a Wonderful Life. It was only a few lines, but I was hooked.
Tell Mary to get on the extension upstairs.
He says to get on the extension upstairs.
I can't. Mother's on the extension.
I am not.
I've been a voice actor for every show since then. For 12 years now, the IPR radio drama has brought together students and faculty from the Ball State campus and community members of all ages from across East Central Indiana. Audience members watch the live performance on campus, tune in on their radios, watch it on Ball State PBS, or listen online anywhere in the world. Tonight, we'll take a look back at how this holiday tradition developed and became such a uniquely special event in our community. If you've enjoyed IPR radio dramas before, you might recognize a few of the voices you're going to hear. So grab a tasty beverage, gather your loved ones, and enjoy this IPR Radio Drama Retrospective. Like many good stories, this story starts with a legend, one that circulated for years in the telecommunications department at Ball State. And this led to the very first IPR radio drama, a recreation of War of the Worlds, performed on the 70th anniversary of the famous original broadcast.
There was a legend in TCOM that the very first professor, Dr. William Tomlinson, had an original script of the War of the Worlds from 1938. They called it the Panic Broadcast of 1938. And that myth went on and on for over 20 years while I was a teacher there. So that started us thinking. And Brian Boswell was a graduate student in the telecommunications department at that time. And as collaboration happens, we got to talking, probably in the lounge, and we said, you know, coming up is the 70th anniversary of War of the Worlds, famous Panic broadcast. Why don't we go talk to the good people at Indiana Public Radio and see if we can recreate it?
I was part of the original team when we began the radio dramas. It was an idea that Brian Boswell, who had come up with me actually as student announcers at the same time. Brian Boswell brought to me, and his passion was infectious and his vision was catching.
Here's a TCOM professor and her graduate student coming up with kind of a cockamamie idea that's based on a myth from many years ago in TCOM that somebody actually had a script of this, and so it's floated through TCOM, and I knew the people at Indiana Public Radio and had volunteered there for fundraising, but I didn't know if they would say yes. And lo and behold, in the room were people from the symphony, people from the School of Music, people from the theater, people from radio, people from television. And everybody said, yes, we can make that happen. And that's exactly the way you get new things done.
When the idea was suggested, and yes, it was maybe a little risky, or maybe it was a little bizarre, and maybe it wasn't certain about whether or not it would come off, I had faith in a couple of things. I had faith in the competency and the professionalism of the people that brought the idea, and their ability and their passion. And I also had faith in my audience. I had faith that they knew we were not just there to find the finest angle to get by and do our mission and be a successful enterprise, but they knew that we wanted to be ready to meet them in ways that were personal and direct. And this was an opportunity for that. And even if it had not gone as well as it did, and it went well, it was exciting. Even if it had not gone well, I knew that my audience would have believed in the failure. That the generosity of heart and spirit that members and donors show a couple or 12 times a year is an ongoing testimony. We believe in you. I don't need everything to go right. And we made that first radio broadcast kind of slapdash as we were figuring out what we needed to learn while we were figuring out and learning it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most terrifying thing I've ever witnessed. Wait a minute. Someone's crawling out of the hollow top. Someone or something.
Nancy Carlson became the producer for the broadcast, and Brian Boswell stepped into the role of director.
So it was my first time directing a radio drama. It was really fascinating for me. One of my loves is classic radio. And so I didn't know where to start exactly, so we ran rehearsals. Everyone was great to work with. It was amazing. Everyone just had this passion for it, most of them coming from either, theater or radio world themselves.
We had an all-star cast of Muncie, many not affiliated with Ball State, and several rehearsals. And then for the first time, we did live sound effects, which are the only way they used to be, where they would actually clang cymbals together or open squeaking doors or make footsteps.
Now the whole field's caught fire. The woods, the barns.
The whole idea took a few months.
In fact, the timeline from auditions to the live performance was less than a month, with only a cast read-through, a rehearsal with sound effects, and a dress rehearsal the night before the show.
While it might look easy on paper to say, well, we'll have the sound of shoes on a wooden plank.
George, on your way out, would you mind turning off the phonograph?
To mimic the sound of somebody walking across the room, or find a little miniature door.
Yeah, I'm out here on the porch, Mother. Just thought I'd get some air.
Well.
And close the door, and it'll sound like a door. And it sounds like it's going to be very simple, but one of the lessons learned was there was a lot of craft and a lot of professionalism and a lot of talent that had been going into these radio dramas from years and years past. And we could recreate that, but there were not as many shortcuts as you might have imagined.
No one knew how many audience members to expect at the live performance, so the next question was, where do we perform this? Early in the process, Brian Boswell was thinking it might happen in one of the IPR studios.
We eventually just kind of started getting the feel for everything and thought we could maybe attract a bit of an audience. And so working with Indiana Public Radio, we actually did it there in Bruce Hall. Got a very large, good-sized audience, and we were very into it.
The exciting thing was the back timing. It had to work perfectly within the hour on Indiana Public Radio. So the show was back timed so that we knew exactly 10, 9, 8, when to be quiet, when to start. And then as the show took breaks and ended, we also had to know exactly how many seconds are left for it to fill that hole, that broadcasting hole. We were told to clap with an applause sign, which was really fun because that's so old school.
We had all these, parts working together, and on a live show that's that big, at least to me, at the time it seemed really, really big. I was very nervous, and we started right on time, and we ended up within, I believe, 30 seconds of the end of the show, and we had all these things set up. What if we go late? What if we go early? We ended up, almost right on time.
Marcus Jackman was cast in the role of Announcer 1. After the show, audience members approached him. What did they think?
I remember several people in that audience, not just coming up and saying, hey, nice show, but people who came up to express almost breathlessly how sweet it had been for them, and how much it had meant to them, and how they felt taken back to a different era. That response started me understanding what we were doing, that we were touching their hearts by passing the eye, going in through the ear, right to their heart, into their childhood, and finding things that were golden for them.
I got all kinds of warm responses from people who had seen it. A lot of people said, wow, they were inspired and they wanted to do something like that.
The people loved it, and in my file, I have a couple thank you letters that came in by November 1st or 2nd saying that was a great experience.
One of Nancy's colleagues, Chris Fluke, helped bring the radio drama to the local television audience on WIPB-TV, now Ball State PBS.
So my first radio drama was with War of the Worlds with Nancy Carlson. I have found a long time ago not to ever refuse Nancy on anything. For many reasons, but mostly because Nancy does not get involved with dumb projects. So everything she gets involved with is usually pretty exciting. It was one of my first years here teaching at Ball State, and I got a group of students together, and we did all the video side of things. And then I animated the opening sequence. And from that end of it, the first time that I did that, I was teaching a lot of motion graphics classes. I still do, and I thought it'd be a great way to take a project from beginning to end and then just show my students how to do it and base tutorials out of it, and it worked very well, allowing me to help contribute to the whole thing, but then create all this other stuff for the classroom.
Even with all the work Chris put into the opening credits animation and the video recording, he saw the television broadcast as a complement, not a replacement for the radio broadcast.
It's meant to sound great, and so if you close your eyes, you get that kind of experience, but seeing things behind the scenes, seeing how the actors and actresses perform on stage, being in character in terms of dress, the sound effects, the Foley work that's being done is pretty amazing.
Can you tell us the meaning of that scraping noise inside the thing?
And you don't get any sense of that if you're not actually watching it. And so I think the video side of things helps to extend that experience for the audience. And then the fact that that part's not done live, so even if you're listening to it live the day it broadcasts, or even if you're in the audience, they usually run it on Christmas Day or whatever, you're able to go back and see that experience sort of behind the scenes, even though it's not exactly behind the scenes.
Now, let's go back before the performance, before the rehearsals, and before the auditions even, when Marcus Jackman gathered people from across campus to plan this anniversary recreation of War of the Worlds. Everyone in the room thought this would be a one-time event, but suddenly Marcus began to realize this might just be worth another try.
We rebroadcast the Panic broadcast the next year also, our recreation of it as just a continued celebration. And we remembered the enthusiasm of the participants, and we reached out to let them know, hey, we're going to rebroadcast this. And their enthusiasm had not really waned much at all. I think that was when it started churning in my mind. We could do this every year. This outreach event is something that can be sustaining. I've seen productions at Muncie Civic. I was an arts reporter for years. I know there are other theatrical groups. I know there are musicians all over this listening area. It's not just something that happens in the big brick buildings on Ball State campus. It's happening all over. Maybe there is even more than I dreamed.
The second radio drama was performed in December 2009, and it came with a very significant change. A Christmas Carol was chosen as the story, and the IPR radio drama has been a holiday tradition ever since. For Marcus Jackman, this second radio drama was also an opportunity to expand the production to a broader group of participants than the first time around.
By and large, it seemed to be largely a Ball State community thing, just because we were throwing it together in a pretty short order. But when the community showed up and embraced this idea and showed their enthusiasm, it made me understand this must be, and it can be, something much wider. And so when we began moving from there, opened up the auditions officially to the whole community, invited people to come in, and we started pulling voices and pulling names and pulling faces from all around the IPR listening area. It was so exciting to know not just there are these talented people, but that they all want to take part in crafting this story. That was the show where I realized how sweet and how fun and how rich this could be as an experience for the performers and artists and producers, and also for the audience. I loved seeing that cast come together when I remember sitting side by side with Ben Lancaster, the director, on the casting nights. And I'd never been on that side of the casting table. It was very empowering. But I remember when Todd Terrell came in and read for Scrooge. And I think we tried to keep a poker face, and then Todd left, and Ben and I looked at each other and said, okay, we have our Scrooge. And it wasn't just, I think we've got him, but it was exciting.
After a 2-year hiatus, the IPR radio drama continued in 2012 with a production of It's a Wonderful Life, with Ben Lancaster stepping in again to produce and direct the show. Marcus Jackman continued in his role of executive producer, but this time he was also helping with the live sound effects.
Seeing Ben especially take what Brian had begun, and to see Ben take that to become an amazing, theatrically richer experience for all of us, it was an amazing privilege. It was exciting for me to do sound effects as well, to be the Foley artist, to run the big wind machine.
Was folded up in that newspaper he gave to Old Man Potter.
Those first 2 shows that we did immediately after War of the Worlds, where I got to be part of that process from beginning to end as executive producer, those were sweet and exciting.
Chris Fluke returned to produce the TV broadcast and the opening animation for It's a Wonderful Life, and he's continued to work his broadcast magic each year. He begins planning for the opening animation in October, when he receives the title, the storyline, and the script for the upcoming production.
Now, what I try to do is to take whatever is presented in the story, whatever the main concepts are, or what the actual story, like beat points are, and then find imagery that matches that, and then tell sort of like an overture of that story, or having a lot of symbolism of what's within that story, and then just presenting that on screen, really as a place to be entertaining to start the entire broadcast, but then also as a place to put the credits. You have to have both the technical skill to be able to work in the graphics, but then a sense of art or style to be able to make it look good. And so it's a great way, a great entry point for students to be able to understand how that process works. That could be used for documentary, it's used for sports, lots of other things. So there's a technical side and then a creative side.
Well, Chris definitely has the technical skill and the creative skill, because his IPR radio drama animations have won him 4 regional Emmys so far.
I'm always very proud of it because it just, I think, to me, just validates the quality of the stuff that's put into it, but also gives further recognition for the radio drama, that we are recognized for it outside of, Muncie and the folks in East Central Indiana.
In 2013, the holiday radio drama was preparing for its 4th production, Miracle on 34th Street, but a new director was needed. And wow, did Marcus Jackman find a good one in Jennifer Blackmer, a professor in the Department of Theater and Dance at Ball State. She also happened to be a huge public radio fan. She'd become an IPR listener and member right after she moved here from Minnesota.
of course, the first thing I do when I come down to Muncie is I'm like, all right, what's the public radio station? And I found IPR, of course. And so the morning edition, All Things Considered, Stan Sollers, and at that point it was Marcus Jackman in the afternoon.
During the summer of 2013, Jennifer met with Marcus to talk about that year's radio drama.
He talked to me about places in the community that we could go for auditions and such. And I asked him, I said, well, is it okay if I publicize this with our students? And he's like, absolutely, would they be interested? And I was like, heck yeah, because radio drama, voice work is something that we study with our students, but they don't really have the opportunity to sort of do it in full production. So we put out a call for auditions in the community as well as with our students, and the turnout was insane. It was wonderful. So we did 2 nights of open auditions and had this wealth of riches of people to choose from. And so our first cast was a large one, and it was a combination of community members and students. And the feeling was just superb. I mean, from start to finish, not only were we creating an amazing piece and telling a wonderful story, but community members were getting to know students, and students were getting to know community members, and there was a whole just a host of friendships that were formed in that particular process as well. So it was great from start to finish.
One of those community members in the cast was Michael Kleberg.
Is Chris Kringle crazy? Court case coming. Kiddies cry calamity.
Who was already familiar to fans of Muncie Civic Theater.
It's been almost 30 years that I've been doing local theater, and I had heard of the Christmas broadcast, but I didn't know anything about it. And somebody told me that they were auditioning for Miracle on 34th Street, which is one of my favorite stories. And I thought, well, I'll just have to go over there and see what's going on. And Jen Blackmer was the director, and Jen has directed me a couple of times, so I already knew it was going to be a good experience no matter what happened. And I auditioned, I read a couple of sides, and they cast me as Chris Kringle. And I got to wear my Santa Claus cap during the broadcast.
Give me a difficult one, like who was
Miracle
Vice
on
President
34th Street marked a transition for Marcus Jackman and for the IPR radio drama as a whole.
Miracle was my last show with Jen Blackmer, and that felt clearly like we were handing off to someone who was who knew not just what they were doing, but knew how they wanted to do it, and had an energy and a focus and a vision that was, again, going to take us another quantum leap forward.
So why does the radio drama, a form of storytelling from decades past, keep people coming back year after year as audience members and those involved in the production?
Radio is often called theater of the mind. And I think the reason for that is when you listen to something on the radio where you're not given the visuals, you create the visuals in your mind. Listen to a really well done radio drama, close your eyes, and you form those pictures.
When we're in our mother's wombs, sound lets us know there's something out there that's bigger than us, something beyond what I can reach, something beyond what I can see, actually.
I think that what gives the radio drama its staying power is that it is such a classic form of storytelling, even though we have, IMAX theaters with these over-the-top productions that are very beautiful, but we'll still all go to see plays, which are a more traditional or simplified form of storytelling.
There's something really comforting about things that remain consistent over the years. There's something very comforting and secure and delightful about shutting off all of the stimulation and all of the distraction and being still and listening to a story, the way that we all grew up with our parents reading to us.
It goes back to me, listening with my parents to Prairie Home Companion that led me to really enjoy the medium of that and the storytelling. So yeah, I think it's the imagination that allows the audience to become, even through a speaker. You're not there, but it draws you in a way like a good book might.
When I read The Three Musketeers or Kidnapped, I picture what the bad guy looks like, what the hero looks like. And radio does the same thing. The voices are the ones that bring forward the personalities and the action. So radio of the mind or theater of the mind is an exercise of your creativity.
When storytelling began to craft an identity for a people group, it began around a campfire together. It wasn't performed at a distance. It was something we did together. This is who we are. This is how the human being is made, I believe. We need to participate ourselves. Let me into creating this story with you. Let me engage myself in filling out the scene in my mind's eye. Let me be a part of this.
My goal for all of these has always been to form a community and to have this experience be a celebration. Having fun with it, and also understanding the point of what you're doing and the fact that you're doing this not only as a community, but for the community, right? The goal is always to empower a group of people to tell a lovely story. And I think when that is your goal, then it can't help but be a warm and wonderful experience, not only for the people doing it, but also for the audience.
I think it's something we need. Anything that brings us together under the auspices of a story, and anything that gets us to quiet down, to be near people that we love, to share something as a community, and to engage our imaginations in a slowdown.
To have a live radio drama in a small community like Muncie that's broadcast to a wide number of people all over Indiana, I think that's really special and unique.
There's community actors, there's Ball State students, there's Ball State professors, there's Ball State staff. It's just wonderful to be able to put something together so focused with talented people to create that moment, that hour-long moment for the community to enjoy. It's just a lot of fun. It's exhilarating. It's gratifying.
That time of year, regardless of what you're doing, is always stressful, and most of that we just put on ourselves, right? Once we get our ensemble together, and once we get the schedule together, and once we begin, then it's like a reminder to me of why I do what I do in the first place, right? We tell stories to celebrate, and this is a wonderful time of year to celebrate. And so I use that as a chance to momentarily, I guess, forget about all the stuff I do, forget about the finals I have to grade and the gifts I have to buy and the stuff I have to do. And then when it all happens in that moment of performance, it's just joy.
And there's something about the slowness of the radio drama that is really comforting. The magic of live performance is everyone in that room, from the audience to the actors to the technicians to the crew. We all have a plan, but we never know how that plan's gonna go. You know, when we finish out at 9 o'clock or whatever, and it actually went really well, that sense of relief and having accomplished something really special together, that's something that we can't get anywhere else.
I couldn't agree more. I love seeing the production come together live on stage. It's a tradition we look forward to continuing next holiday season. For all of us at Indiana Public Radio and Ball State PBS, thanks for joining us to celebrate the IPR radio drama.
From our family to yours, happy holidays and good night.